The difference between a major label and an indie label might be more than the number of TV screens in their offices. So today we'll be talking to indie labels to find out more on how they operate. Anika Mottershaw from Bella Union in London comes from an established level being indie, while Fredrik Andersson is putting in his hours at Welfare Sounds and Records, one of the most prolific labels in the Gothenburg area. What do they have in common? How close do they work with their artists? And how do they set up their release campaigns? It's time to uncover.
How do you find artists as an A&R for Bella Union?
I can't really say there's like one specific way that we find artists. Like it usually comes through like a combination of events, I would say. Festivals and gigs, support bands, and people send me a lot of music.
Have you ever signed an artist based on a demo?
It can happen that a demo is successful. I feel like there are things you can do to improve your chances, right? Like, researching who you're sending it to and what kind of music they like, so that you're not wasting your time and you're wasting their time.
Yeah, and how about you, Fredrik? Because I guess you must also get a lot of demos being sent in.
Yeah, a lot. And we're a bunch of people listening through pretty much everything. So, but I mean, we also run a studio, and we have a lot of bands coming through there that pick up our interest. It's an obvious, ground where we can, get to know a lot about the artists.
If you have a single, do you hit the radio first, the magazines? How does it all look, if you could just summarize the whole plan?
I guess it depends massively on the artist and the territory as well. In the UK, we have a very specific radio cycle. The way that radio works, a single will stay in contention for airplay for about 7 or 8 weeks, and you just focus on that one single for that time before you would consider taking another one. So you do that sort of typical pitching for reviews, sharing singles, trying to get radio play before the album release date. Then the album release date comes and you try and get everyone excited, do lots of posts on social media. And that could be the starting point that each territory can tweak. Every region will have a different approach to radio, for example, might have a different suggestion for what track to focus on release day.
How do you work, Fredrik, in Welfare? Is it similar?
Yeah, it's very much similar, but maybe in a smaller scale and maybe with a little bit smaller artists perhaps, which makes a big difference on maybe how you do it. We base a lot of things on the DIY thing, and we do a lot of things ourselves with the bands. We, for example, release a completely new artist, as we do fairly often. You want to start building maybe for a longer time before you go to an album, and how you do that looks different from the kind of album cycle that Anika described here. And that could be a whole year of just doing stuff, singles and shows, and mixing it up with trying to reach media and trying to get more people interested and building an interest before you actually go to an album. And then, we kind of more look at building it from Sweden and Scandinavia, and then trying to reach the bigger regions and add on more marketing and promotion in those regions. And then, we can't really afford to be everywhere at the same time.
How much would you say that you let the bands decide, and how much do you decide over a release?
We would never decide something without the artist agreeing. We're a team, so I wouldn't say, oh, you want your album out in October, well, I think it should go in February, so it's going in February. That's just not how we work. So if I was thinking, okay, well, October actually isn't a good time, I would suggest February. And then they say, well, that feels too late. What about, could we do it in December? You just try and find some way of keeping everybody happy. The booking agent will have ideas of when they want things to happen, and we've got a release schedule. So
yeah, I mean, it's the same. But besides that, it's just a discussion, and in the end, if it will affect the release, to an extent that we don't think it's doable, I mean, that's going to be the case instead. I mean, maybe you should do it somewhere else or with someone else or in another way instead. But besides that, it's the artist, the music, how they want to do it is key.
If you compare an EP to an album, what are the pros and cons?
I feel like the impact from an EP is just way less than an album. So it's the same amount of work, but you get a smaller return. For example, print press in the UK just will not consider most EPs unless you're a huge artist or it's a very buzzy moment for you, unless there's a good reason to do an EP, such as you've released an album, everyone's really excited about it. It did really well. You've got loads of touring lined up. So let's do an EP later in the year to sort of tide us over before we do the next album and to support those tour dates. And that makes sense. Or if it's a brand new artist and you want to try and build the profile a bit, and then you do the EP or maybe some singles and then you lead into an album, that can also work. But sometimes if you did an album 3 years ago and now you'd like to do an EP and there's no sign of an album coming after that, I would just say maybe go away, write a few extra songs and do it as an album.
I don't think I need to add anything to that. It's maybe that in the past years, maybe decade, you have been seeing it used a little bit more and maybe a little bit different. But I mean, the longevity in an album is so much more than an EP.
What kind of content do you want available from an artist?
I mean, ideally, we'll have everything. We'll have the nice photos, we'll have nice artwork, we'll have nice videos. I personally think all of that is so important because of the time that we live in. We're such a visually informed generation of people now. You know, that's like what social media is, isn't it? Like you can take a fabulous picture of your breakfast with the avocado and the egg, and for better or for worse, that's the way people's brains are trained now, is to process information based on the visual imagery. So you can learn a lot about what an artist is doing from all of the visual. So for me, I think it is really important to try and have a strong sense of a wider aesthetic that you're trying to create.
So you have very strong opinions of it on it. Are you the same, Fredrik?
Completely. I mean, you have content coming constantly in different ways and in different forms and shapes. I wouldn't say it's enough. It's not even sufficient if a band comes and say we have a photo and a video. I mean, if that's the idea for it, it's going to be hard. So yeah, I mean, there comes a lot to it, and especially in social media, where you need to always look out for how you present your band or your artist or your label, for that matter.
Are you guys at Welfare, are you involved in producing content with or for your bands, or are you just trying to oversee that it's being done by the bands themselves?
We do both, and we try to be creative in every release and try to add on as much as we can. And we have, in the house where we have the studio, is also a video production company and a few other people that is very skilled within these things.
Do you do the same, Anika? It seems like you think it's too important to just leave to the bands entirely.
No, I mean, sometimes you can just leave it to the band because they've got really great ideas. And sometimes it happens that they don't have a strong vision and they need a little bit more of help connecting to the right people.
If you try to approach a new market, what is the first thing you do?
Lots of artists I've worked with over the years have had this real desire to go to Japan, for example. The question you have to ask is why? Why does the band need to go to Japan? Are you ready to go to Japan? There's obviously lots of costs involved. Has someone invited you? Or is it just that you want to go on holiday to Japan? Because that's
always that.
Yeah, if you want to go on holiday to Japan, by all means, go on holiday to Japan, and it'll be cheaper than bringing all your stuff and your band and trying to do a Japan tour. With any market, you just have to wonder, why are you going there? Is there a reason that you should be going there? Is the timing right?
Our general plan is always to try to reach these, tastemakers or whatever you want to call them within different markets that can elevate the band's, success really in a short amount of time. And that's kind of what we can do from our side in the beginning. The why question is good and explaining the cost involved. But that's also why we often tend to go to Germany, because it's cheapest.
Oh well, it seems the responsibilities running an indie label are endless. So make sure to support the indie scene. That's where the big sounds and your favorite music of tomorrow is hanging out today. Since you'll be needing more of this kind of stuff, just follow our socials. Thanks for watching.